Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, Mr. Mark Rother, Vice President, Senior Engineer, DeGolia and McNaughton, Mr. Juan Pablo Francos, Engineer Associate, DeGoila and McNaughton, Mr. Paul Singh, Energy Company stakeholders, management and staff of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, members of the media. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the year-end 2021 and 2022 gas reserve audits. My name is Karen Paul Lyons of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, and I am your Mistress of Ceremony. Today, the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries will officially announce the audits of non-associated natural gas reserves and resources of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago as at December 31st, 2021 and December 31st, 2022, respectively. Trinidad and Tobago has a well-developed downstream petrochemical industry based on natural gas, which makes conducting regular audits essential. It helps to provide security of supply assurances to large downstream oil and gas users and investors. It is noteworthy to mention that the 2021 and 2022 gas audit results would be presented by independent petroleum consultant DeGolia and McNaughton of Dallas, Texas, USA, on behalf of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries. To begin with today's proceedings, I invite Ms. Penelope Bradshaw-Naz, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, to give opening remarks.
Thank you, Karen. The Honorable Stuart Young, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries and Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Mr. Mark Rudder, Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary, Vice President, Senior Engineer, DeGolia and McNaughton, Juan Pablo Francos, representatives of the energy companies, members of staff of the Ministry of Energy, members of the media, other invited guests, and the listening and viewing audience, good afternoon. I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming you to the results of the annual audits of the non-associated natural gas reserves and resources of Trinidad and Tobago for year-end 2021 and for year-end 2022. These audits give a snapshot of national reserves and resources as at the aforementioned dates. The results are used by the Ministry of Energy to ensure that the government is strategically positioned to guide business and operation decisions. The presentations of the annual natural gas reserves audits are now anticipated by both members of the energy sector and by the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Before the engagement of independent consultants by the ministry, there were multiple reserves and resource standards and different technical approaches that were used among operators. This meant that aggregating volumes to produce the country's resource figures was not an easy task and gave rise to inconsistencies. The use of one consultant and one standard, the PRMS, ensures that we are comparing, as they say, apples to apples. Since the year 2000, we've produced annual reports consistently except for just 1 year, due, of course, to the cooperation of our upstream natural gas operators and the National Gas Company, who supplied critical data so that the auditors can do their evaluations. This partnership is mutually beneficial as the audits can encourage new investment in both the exploration and development of gas resources and in its usage in the downstream sector. I want to acknowledge at this time the MEI's team who work alongside the consultants led by Mr. Christian Welsh, Acting Senior Petroleum Engineer at the Ministry. I also want to thank our consultants, de Golia and McNaughton, for working together with the Ministry and with the operators to produce the first 2 audits of this 5-year period, demonstrating their technical competence. So, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to sit back and listen as we continue with the rest of the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Permanent Secretary, for putting into context or reason for being present here today. Ladies and gentlemen, without wasting any of your time from your busy schedules, I would like to welcome our feature address speaker, the Honorable Stuart R. Young, MP, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries in the Office of the Prime Minister. Honorable Minister, I welcome you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here, and I again apologize for a bit of a delay in today's program. It's indeed quite heartening to see so many of our stakeholders in the industry, both in our downstream as well as our midstream and upstream here today. We appreciate your presence. Well, welcome to the results of the annual audits of the non-associated natural gas reserves and resources of Trinidad and Tobago, as you've heard, for the years ended 2021 and 2022. As the government promised, we are here today to communicate openly and transparently with the country to promote not only a deeper understanding, but also an update on our hydrocarbon resources that remain the driving force of our country's economy. The presentation of the results of the audits has not followed the usual time frame, as we have had new auditors on board, which required a greater level of interaction with the ministry and industry in the conduct of these audits. But also, I must take personal responsibility and apologize for the delay, as the audit results have been ready for some time, but due to my professional commitments, I was unable to present until today, so that fault is mine. Let me provide some background to our new audit consultant, de Goyer and McNaughton. After the 5-year contract with our previous auditor, Ryder Scott Company, ended in the year 2020, Cabinet granted approval in 2021 for the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries to engage an independent petroleum consultant to conduct annual gas reserves and resource audits for the 5-year period 21 to 25. Following a highly competitive tender process, a team from the ministry conducted evaluations and selected de Goyer and McNaughton, D&M, from a field of 5 prestigious international petroleum consultants, which tendered bids. Due to the date that contract was awarded, the audits for year ended 2021 and 2022 were conducted at the same time. These are the first and second audits of the current 5-year contract. The main objective of the audit is the provision of an independent, certified statement of the country's natural gas reserves and resources in an internationally recognized reporting format. De Goyer and McNaughton, which does not have a vested interest in any of the hydrocarbon resources being evaluated, is well placed to provide an independent assessment of our natural gas volumes. A major benefit of this independent audit is that it is insulated from the project investments based on these resources. De Goyer and McNaughton uses internationally recognized and accepted standards that have been approved by the World Petroleum Council the Society of Petroleum Engineers, the American Association of Petroleum Geologists, and the Society of Petroleum Evaluation Engineers. The use of this standard means that the methodology and technical vocabulary in the report produced can be widely understood in the industry and used as a basis for the development and shaping of national energy strategies. Indeed, in order for the industry to better understand the basis of government's decision-making, the detailed audit reports are made available annually to each gas operator for its fields by the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries. The current International Reserve Standard, last revised in 2018, introduced the terms technically recoverable resources as well as P1 and C1 resources. I will use these terms going forward, and I must say personally, I much prefer the old of proven, and it was much simpler and easier to understand. Since we last presented to the nation on a gas audit a little over 2 years ago, the results of the current audit have shown a downward revision in the technically recoverable reserves. If we examine Chart 1, which references totally unrisked, technically recoverable resources, formally proved, probable, and possible, which you would accept is simpler, from 2002 to 2022, we observed the consistent upward trend in total unrisked, technical recoverable resources over the period 2016 to 19, followed by a marked decline from 2020 to 2022. At the same time, gas production fell significantly between 19 and 21 due to project delays caused by COVID-19 pandemic. There was a small increase in our production in 2022. The P1 and C1 technically recoverable resources, which were formerly referred to as proved reserves, experienced a 6.2 increase from 2020 to 2021. Between 2020 and 2021, there was a 168% replacement of this resource compared to 57% replacement between 2019 and 2020. This means, as shown in Chart 2, that the 0.93 TCF of P1 and C1 resources produced were actually replaced by additions amounting to 1.56 TCF in that year, raising the P1 and C1 resources from 10.2 TCF to 10.9 TCF. Moving on to 2022, the P1 and C1 technically recoverable resources experienced a 5.9% increase from 2021 to 2022, and during the same period, there was a 165% replacement of this resource. This meant, as shown in Chart 3, that 0.99 TCF of P1 and C1 resources produced were replaced by additions amounting to 1.63 TCF in that year, raising the P1 and C1 resources from 10.9 TCF to 11.5 TCF. Exploration resources were static from 2020 to 2021, but then rose by almost 3% between 2021 and 2022. The effect of these additions is seen on Chart 4. This rise follows a decline between 2017 and 2019 due to the movement of deep water volumes into this category. So in layman's terms, what that means is at the end of 2021, we're looking at resources that we've been able to quantify at about 11.5 TCF, and some of the additions to the resources are the work that has been done in the deep water. The year-end 2021 and year-end 2022 audit reports highlight the following movements within the P1 and C1 technically recoverable resources category. The Woodside operated assets volumes increased by 49% during the period because of the two Bongo field appraisal wells, which successfully confirmed volumes in blocks in the north, central, and south sections of the field during the second half of 2021. The second largest volume increase by an operator came from Shell, which added the large Manatee volumes as a result of the 2019 agreement between the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the government of Venezuela, which set the allowable recoverable volume on the Trinidad side and the execution of the Manatee production sharing contract on November 17, 2021. 3, Touchstone tripled its volumes consequent on the Cass Deep 1 well drilled in the first quarter of 2021, which led to a revision of the gas in place estimate and an increase in the expected recovery. 4, BPTT, the operator with the country's largest P1 and C1 technically recoverable resources, had both upward and downward revisions, with the overall impact being a small downward revision of 4.1%. And of course, I look forward to, hopefully, in the not too distant future, the success we may have with the Manakin Coquina field that will again increase the reserves that are available to us. EOG had a downward revision of 13% during the period due to field performance and a re-evaluation of IBIS and Mento volumes. The year-end 2021 and year-end 2022 gas audits were the first audits conducted in person since the border closure brought on by COVID-19. The return to an in-person experience was especially useful as the role of country auditor is new to the consultant. As I speak, the data is being gathered for the period of year-end 2023, and that audit, I look forward to it being concluded, and independent evaluations are underway on mapping Shell's Aphrodite discovery, the performance of EOG's Osprey East wells, and BP's infill drilling in Mango, Angeline, and Savannah, to name but a few examples. As was the case for 2021 and 2022 audits, you can be assured that the government will continue in its drive for transparency in the energy sector and to keep the public reliably informed of the results of the 2023 and future audits. The outlook for natural gas continues to be promising for Trinidad and Tobago as we continue to encourage exploration as well as appraisal and developmental drilling so that resources can be moved from the categories of higher risk to the lowest risk P1 and C1 technically recoverable resource categories. Operators continue to invest in natural gas as evidenced by BP's SIP development, which started drilling the first of 7 wells in February, and it's planned to target a resource estimate of 479 BCF and deliver first gas by 2025. Development drilling is also ongoing by Touchstone in the onshore Cascadoo field, as well as exploration and development drilling by EOG in Parula. On October 3rd, 2023, the shallow water competitive bid round was opened and will close later this month on the 27th of May. We are optimistic given the interest by some of the companies to changes made in the terms and conditions of the shallow water bid round. I take this opportunity to express on behalf of the government sincere thanks to Juan Pablo Francos and the De Goya McNaughton team for the quality work they've done in completing these audits on time to our satisfaction. What I can also report to you, the population of Trinidad and Tobago, is that last week when I was in London, I used the opportunity to meet with executives from Shell and BP, and both companies remain aggressive and bullish on Trinidad and Tobago, have reaffirmed their commitment to continue in Trinidad and Tobago, and we spoke about some exciting projects and prospects that we expect to have developed in Trinidad and Tobago as we go forward. What I can say is that all of the upstreamers, and I see, well, EOG was here present this afternoon, Woodside, Perenco, Touchstone, and others also have similar sentiments. So as we go forward, I caution that Trinidad and Tobago is a mature province, and as we continue to exploit our resources, we do face declines, but with the continued exploration and appraisal wells, I hope that we will be able to move some of our resources and our reserves into what I formally call the proven and the probable categories. There's also some work that was done recently in the Columbus Basin, and I look forward to some success in that area with some new drilling techniques that will be used in the future. I thank you all for being here this afternoon, and at this stage, we'll take questions at the end. I thank you all for continuing to participate here with Trinidad and Tobago.
Honorable Minister, thank you for delivering an insightful and pertinent feature address to our in-person and viewing audience. At this time, I ask for your continued undivided attention as I introduce Vice President, Senior Engineer of DeGola and McNaughton Consultant, Mr. Juan Pablo Francos, to present the results of Trinidad and Tobago gas audit for the year end 2021 and 2022.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just 1 minute while we fix this. Yeah. There it goes. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending this press conference. My name is Juan Pablo Francos. I'm a vice president for DeGola and McNaughton, the company that got awarded this 5-year contract to conduct the country gas audits. In the following presentation, I'm going to share with you the results of the 2021 and 2022 year-end evaluation, as well as provide a brief overview on the company and the guidelines that were used to conduct this evaluation. For those who are not aware, DeGola and McNaughton was established back in 1936 by our two co-founders, Mr. DeGola and Mr. McNaughton. They built this company on 3 pillars: knowledge, integrity, and service. And we are proud to have kept these values during our evaluations. We work with clients all over the world, different type of organizations, operators, national companies, financial institutions. We are based in Dallas, United States. We have office worldwide. And we are always proud to say that we were selected by the Ministry of Trinidad and Tobago, as well as companies, for example, like Saudi Aramco. We were selected to conduct their initial evaluation of their reserves a few years ago, and we continue to work with different operators worldwide. Here in the region, we work in Suriname, in Trinidad and Tobago with different companies, and in the specific division in which work, which is South America and the Caribbean, we work with operators of the main operators of each of the countries of the region. We have more than 150 professionals worldwide. That makes us the largest independent consultancy firm. It is completely owned by employees. We don't have any shareholders or external participation from any organization. And that is why our reports are requested and used to support different funding and different purposes. The audit that we conducted was based on specific guidelines in this particular case, the Petroleum Resources Management System, which is a system that is used worldwide for most of the evaluations. It provides a cohesive and a guideline on how to estimate and how to evaluate development projects, as well as how to report results in a specific framework that classify these petroleum quantities in different categories. We work with uncertainty, and that's why you will hear about 1P, 2P, and 3P. You will hear about reserves, contingent resources, as well as prospective resources. This system is the one that guides that classification system. The audit that was conducted includes the estimating the non-associated gas, technically recoverable quantities of the country. This involves evaluating properties onshore, shallow, and deep water. And we had to review and analyze information and data provided by all the operators in Trinidad and Tobago: Woodside, BP, De Novo, EOG, Perenco, Shell, Touchstone, and we also reviewed open areas with information provided by the ministry. Here today is me and Paul representing the Goliath, but behind this work, there were involved 54 professionals involving geologists, geophysicists, petrophysicists, engineers, and technicians. We input more than 8,500 hours on this work to conduct in the same year 2 audits at the same time. This audit was conducted over a 5-month period, and it involved the in-depth review of the geological and reservoir engineering aspects of all the assets. We had project kickoff and virtual meetings with each operator during the months of February and March 2023. We conducted a mid-project review with the staff from the ministry. And we finally issued a preliminary report during July, and eventually the final report during August 2023. Here you can see the yearly gas production of the country. In 2022, the country produced 988 BCF, and that production was contributed in 45% by BP, in 25% by Shell, 13% by EOG, 12.5% by Woodside, and the remaining from De Novo, Perenco, and Touchstone. In this table, you can observe the unrisked gas technically recoverable quantities since 2012. The last 2 evaluations are the one we conducted, where we concluded on an estimation on the P1 plus C1 in 2021 of 10,854 BCF, and in 2022, a P1 plus C1 of 11,498 BCF. You can also observe the different categories, P2 plus C2 and P3 plus 3C. Each of these categories represent a different level of uncertainty. As the minister mentioned, P1 plus C1 is the more certain category, and the P2 and C2 and P3 plus C3 represent a lower level of certainty. We can also here observe the exploration results. The country has a potential on prospective resources of 56,901 BCF. It's a tremendous potential in exploration side. When we review the unrisked gas estimate ultimate recovery, this includes the cumulative production plus the projections. The country has around 50 TCF of EUR. This has been remained stable since 2019 approximately. When we analyze the unrisked gas technically recoverable quantities, we can see the evolution on the different categories, P1 plus C1, P2 plus C2, and P3 plus C3. We can see an increase in the P1 and plus C1 categories, and a natural reduction in the P2 plus C2 and P3 plus C3C. The more information becomes available and the more mature the fields become, there is a narrower uncertainty in the estimations. During 2021 and 2022, the main exploration highlights were the appraisal wells in Bongos that led to an update in the estimates. Touchstone results on Cascadura and Cojo were also incorporated. And for EOG, the Mento and the Osprey wells were also taken into consideration. Significant volumes were added for Manatee, Bongos, Cascadura, Mento, and Osprey fields. As it was stated before, for the year-end 2021 and 2022 audits, a significant P1 plus C1 technically recoverable quantities replacement of 168% and 165% respectively was achieved compared to a P1 and plus C1 technically recoverable quantities replacement of 65 in the year 2020 audit. P1 plus C1 increased 5.6% in the year-end 2022 audit despite increased yearly production from 930 BCF to 988 when compared with the year-end 2021. Here you can observe a summary table with the yearly production in 2021 and in 2022, and the P1 plus C1, P2 plus C2, P3 plus C3 estimates for both audits. As you can see, there has been an increase in the P1 plus C2 and a slight reduction in the P2 plus C2 and P3 plus C3 categories. This concludes the end of the presentation. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you. Okay, thank you all very much. If you could go to this slide. I'm asking that a specific slide from that presentation be put up whilst we do the questions and answers. You know how to find it? All right, members of the media, anyone else, any questions that you all have? Yeah. Thanks. I didn't have the last part, Jules. Okay. All right, let me start with the second part of the question first, which is, what does this mean with respect to the present price of natural gas? It doesn't mean anything because natural gas prices are globally set prices. You have a number of different indices. For example, in the United States, the one that you all will be most familiar with that the media refer to on a daily basis is Henry Hub. There are then other markers, for example, from Europe, TTF and NBP, and then from the Far East, JKM, Japanese Korean marker. Trinidad and Tobago does not set any global pricing of either natural gas or methanol, ammonia, etc. We are off-takers of whatever the price is at. Right now, what you're seeing globally, the trend has been, unfortunately, a low gas price. In particular, the Henry Hub price has been low over the last few months. We've seen a rise, I would say, in the last 7 to 10 days. It's been crossing $2, whereas it was below that at some stages, down to $1.40. What I can tell the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago is, fortunately, this government had the foresight and the confidence to go to our gas producers, our major gas producers, and to negotiate better gas pricing for us, in particular on the LNG side. And as you've heard both the Prime Minister and myself say a number of times, we got a basket of prices, right? So a third based on Brent, a third on JKM, a third on NBP, TTF. And what that means for you, Trinidad and Tobago, so for example, today where the Henry Hub price is $2 for gas, we are getting around $4, sometimes upwards of that. So you're seeing on occasions 40% upwards higher pricing of gas. So that's the gas pricing. This audit does nothing on the pricing side of gas. For us lay people, because whilst I'm the Minister of Energy, I had to learn very quickly in the energy space. What this audit does is it shows us what our current reserve situation is. And that's why I asked for this particular slide to be put up. So when you see P1 and C1, that means what we know is there for sure and what is under contract to be developed, right? So we're looking at 11.4 TCF of gas, trillion cubic feet. And when you marry that with what was, for example, utilized and produced over the last 2 years, it was just under 1 TCF. So by projection, if you have 11.5 million TCF, you're looking at about 11, if we were to continue gas production at current rates, 11 more years of natural gas in our domestic fields. But then what you do is you go to the columns to the side of that, because my right might be your left, and P2 and C2, you see 4.9 BCF there. Well, 14 TCF is really TCF, 4.9 TCF. So what that means is that is the next category. That we know it's there, but you have to do some work to then move it to the category that you're producing. And similarly, the column next it of 5 TCF. So that's about 9 TCF that you know exists. And what you need to do is that exploration or the appraisal wells and then bring it to production to get it into the 14. So you're looking at, when you look at those figures, approximately a potential of another 10 to potentially 20 years in that. But what was interesting to me is when you look at the exploration column, and you would have seen from the years 2012 to now. So in 2012, under exploration, it was 31.6 TCF of gas, trillion cubic feet, and now we're at 56 trillion cubic feet. That's the potential that's out there. So what Trinidad and Tobago needs to do is work with the industry and get persons to do that exploration, especially as we know the next frontier is in the deep water, and to bring those, so what we used to call the proven and the probable. So that will be P2, C2, P1, C1. So I hope I haven't confused the population. But basically what we're looking at is every year doing an audit to know what reserves we have going forward. And this is important in particular for downstreamers, users of it on the petchem side and on the LNG side. And that's why you've seen this government in particular working with the industry on infill drilling, working on the industry for cross-border gas for the future. But how do we work with the industry? And if we have to change the PSC terms, etc., to bring gas to market. So the audit is really giving you a projection of what exists now and what potential there is for the future. And it continues to have a future for Trinidad and Tobago.
And as you speak about, let's say, the downstream, for example, how does the audit or audits like this factor into things like, say, let's say, negotiations for supply contracts for downstream, let's say, ammonia methanol plants and Atlantic LNG?
If you were sitting where I was sitting, you'd see the smiles on the faces of those persons who've been engaged in the negotiations with us over the past few years. Some of these contracts actually have a condition, some of the contracts you enter into, that the companies are to be provided as quickly as possible after the audit reports are available to them. And that is for them to go back to wherever their respective boardrooms are and to look at it, to look at what is the future potential of staying in Trinidad and Tobago, to be quite blunt. The fact that I see all of the stakeholders here in the room is a good sign From what I understand, we continue to have a bright future, but there's work to be done. We have to bring the gas to market. We have to work with the upstreamers. The next factor that plays into that is the negotiations with respect to prices. Prices have changed as the frontier and as the province, as Trinidad and Tobago becomes a more difficult one. It affects pricing. But what we are seeing is the work that the government has done, and in particular the potential of cross-border gas and some of the other initiatives, the deep water, etc. We continue to have a lot of interest with all of our petchem plants and the LNG. We restructured Atlantic LNG at the end of last year, which augurs well, and that too leads into future development of fields. So we continue to have a good industry, a good gas industry in Trinidad and Tobago, and the government is committed, as I'm sure every stakeholder will tell you, with no pressure from the government, that we continue to work very closely with all of them to find that balance.
Just one other thing, just wondering, in the context of what's happening in, say, Guyana and Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago being a mature province, as you have said, a report like this, what does this say in terms of, let's say, international investors looking at these three provinces, Guyana with a major oil and gas boom, Suriname as well, and Trinidad and Tobago being a mature province? Are we in a particular state of challenge in attracting new investment?
I think we in Trinidad and Tobago have to understand, and I'll try to be very delicate here, the Guyana and Suriname situations. You said Guyana is in an oil and gas boom. That is not 100% accurate. Guyana is producing significant, and I'm happy for them, amounts of oil. They don't as yet have any gas industry. That is something the government there has been trying to develop. Suriname has not begun any production. In fact, they are working hard to get FID for first production of significant amounts of potential oil. And right now, those things are still under appraisal. We are very happy for both Guyana and Suriname. But what I've been saying, and the Prime Minister has been saying, and it has been listened to and found traction out there in the world, is one of the serious advantages that Trinidad and Tobago has. It has the infrastructure. There are very few countries in the world that are as small as we are that you could produce LNG, ammonia, methanol, urea, UAN from natural gas. And we have plants here that are all good working plants that can take natural gas once you put that into the pipeline and produce any of those products and literally monetize the gas. Whereas in a new province, you have to take decisions to build the infrastructure to bring the gas, because all of that gas is offshore. You have to bring it onshore. You have to put down plants. You have to put down infrastructure. You have to put down shipping ports to be able to ship the products, etc. Those cost billions and billions and billions of dollars. So there are decisions that need to be made by all investors as to what to do if there is potential gas in the region where you have a particular province that could immediately monetize that gas for you. I'll leave it there.
Hi, good afternoon. Sonal Lala, TDT News. Minister, you spoke about the shallow water bid round. There's been some changes to the terms and conditions. I believe you said it's about to be closed this month. And has there been interest and possible submissions so far?
There's been a lot of interest. So at this stage, what you have is people taking the packages, right? So they would buy the packages to then study it and put in the bid. Based on my limited experience, everybody waits till the last minute to put in the bid, right? Is this kind of psychology? Well, boy, if I put in mine and I guess somebody finds out, they come with something better. So we really would not be able to answer how many bids are going to come in until the 27th of May. But there has been significant amounts of interest, including by some of our current upstream operators in Trinidad, which I'm quite pleased about.
Yeah, Minister, good day. Sean Douglas, Newsday.
Sure.
Would you like to use some adjectives to describe the figures from the end of 21-22?
Encouraging, good news,
Right,
positive.
right. Excellent.
That's as much as I'll use for now.
And secondly, in terms of actually getting gas on tap, what is your ambition like in terms of, would you want to call a number or a year, looking back in Trinidad and Tobago's history as to where we want to be?
Where you want to be and where you can be are two completely different things. I think as I look around the room, every stakeholder in here will say they've heard me say over and over and over again, we want to bring every molecule of gas that is possible to market as quickly as possible. That's the government's mantra. And we're working in that time frame. It is not as simple as that, but I am satisfied that our operators are doing all that is reasonable to be able to fulfill that. What I'll say here at this stage as well is the work that we've done. It takes a little while for that to come to market. So something, for example, like Manatee, which is significant amounts. Manatee is about 3 TCF of gas. That's the Manatee side. The Loran side is 7 TCF of gas. That's 10 TCF of gas. I don't know why you all took down the chart, but if you left the chart up there, you would see 10 TCF of gas is actually just 1 TCF off of what we have in P1 and C1. So when that Manatee gas starts to come on stream, and eventually Loran will come on stream, you'll see that immediately moves Trinidad and Tobago off of one field, Loran Manatee, doubling the current amounts that we have in that P1, C1 category there right now, Sean. So there's a lot of potential. What I will say, based on the work that we've been doing, some of the deals that we've structured, etc., Dragon will come. When it comes, those types of things I expect from 2027 going forward, very, very good increases in our gas production. And there are a number of things that can happen between now and then that will also lead to an increase in gas production. But I expect to see 27, 28, 29, 30 significant increases in Trinidad and Tobago's gas production.
Okay.
Just also, Minister, as you mentioned, this year production, have you had any discussions with the upstreamers in terms of new incentives, or is it that the existing incentives are sufficient for the kind of production that the government would like to see?
Jules, if you speak to any upstreamer, they would love the word incentives. I am not looking on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago to give out any more incentives. I think there's sufficient incentives there. But where we are working with persons is if, for example, they see a stranded amount of gas in a nearby block, etc. We have had instances of that we would say, okay, we'll extend your block to capture that stranded field and allow it there. We're prepared to work with you on areas and aspects of pricing and taking risk, etc. But we are satisfied where we are right now. We have done some major restructuring to our production sharing model contracts, and I expect the benefits, the mutual benefits to be had. And as I said, just last week in London, in speaking to both BP and Shell, it is very positive feedback. And they're happy at the progress that's been made, and I expect them to be contributing significantly to what I say is going to happen in 27, 28, 29, 30 going forward.
In addition to local supply, there's a report like the one that we just heard about, or got the information about. Does that lend to any more impetus or importance to cross-border deals like Dragon Gas?
The deals, absolutely. I mean, the government has said quite openly to the people, and I'll repeat it here, that Venezuela has significant reserves of gas right there across the border from Trinidad and Tobago. So that is what we've pursued. We have succeeded. I'll say once again, we have a 30-year exploration and production license with the government of Venezuela, with all of the commercial terms and conditions contained in that license negotiated and completed. It has been gazetted, so it is the law in Venezuela. So Trinidad and Tobago has a 30-year license for Dragon Field, which it is estimated of proven reserves at P1, C1 to be about 3.2 TCF of gas. To bring it to Trinidad, we have an OFAC license that we all know expires in October of next year, October 2025. There's a lot of potential there. As to can I predict what will happen in the future, the answer is no, but I remain very hopeful. And those are going to be significant for Trinidad. If you use the Loran Manatee field, I just referred to, there's 7 TCF of gas on the Loran side, which is in Venezuela waters. To me, there's only one place for that to go. And I've said before, on one of the last occasions I met with President Maduro in Venezuela, he raised that with me and said, short, we're ready to start dealing with Lauren. And of course, my answer is, well, Mr. President, so am I.
Good afternoon, Peter Christopher from Guardian Media. Given the figures that have been presented in this report, of course, a lot of this would be of a matter of interest for NGC, National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, they are also looking into a lot of renewable projects going forward. How would this report inform those projects as well?
This report doesn't really play any decision-making basis with NGC and going forward with renewables. The government is committed to develop more in the renewable space. NGC has started up a company called NGC Green, and that is part of their mandate to get in the space of more green energy projects, and that is what they're pursuing. Right now, I have them looking at a number of green hydrogen projects. We're looking at the use of wind for power generation, so that continues. These figures are really figures that are to encourage those stakeholders that you see here in the room, those who utilize the natural gas and those who are going after the natural gas.
All right. You also mentioned that during your presentation that you had a brief meeting with stakeholders in Shell and BP in London. With these figures, have they suggested that they would like to revisit certain things, or have they suggested that they would like to, revisit possibly the Atlantic LNG contract in any way?
Absolutely not. I mean, the Atlantic LNG restructuring contract took us 5 years of negotiation. The only thing we could revisit there is if they want to pay a higher price.
I just want to follow up on Peter's first question. Given that Trinidad and Tobago, as the government has said, mature oil and gas province, we continue, of course, to exploit the resources to make the best of it as a nation as we can. But does that issue of maturity lend to the government looking more, or should the government be looking more at projects such as wind and solar? Like, for example, one of the things I've been wondering, we've had the issue with the refinery in Point-a-Pierre, and of course, you talked yesterday about a potential investor and so on, interest. But could some of that plant or real estate also be used for a project that could look at, let's say, solar or wind, as the world is transitioning into that space of providing power, as we still use the resources we have?
The answer is absolutely yes. This government is not closed to any proposal that makes sense for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Let me just make it very, very clear. I went to Cabinet a few weeks ago, as I announced before, and they have approved for us to go ahead, full speed ahead with the wind. But to be able to bring wind turbines onto your power grid and for power generation, you need to do certain studies. That is proceeding full speed ahead. We're pursuing, hopefully, 2 green hydrogen projects. That's also good news. We are currently constructing the largest solar power producing plant in the whole CARICOM. That is being undergone right now. And I'll use this opportunity to remind the staff at the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries that have asked for us to go out again with another RFP for more solar. So all of that is happening. These are not dreams or something to come. We are pursuing all of that. With respect to the refinery, as I said yesterday, and I wouldn't go any further than that, we are hoping for a proposal to come in very soon that will then be evaluated. I'm optimistic about that. But there are always options with existing infrastructure that can be utilized in other areas. Okay? All right. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it greatly. And in particular, thank you to the stakeholders for your patience and for being here this afternoon. Thank you.